Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I think you all can hear me now well. Thank you for coming for the session about AI security. My name is Fernando Cardozo, Director for Product Management on the Cloud Security and also AI Security in Trend Micro. And today I'll be covering the AI in the cloud and the heroes, villains, and security strategies. We try to create as more like a fairy tale story, just to bring a little bit more energy for this session. Sometimes we see those sessions just like tech, and we try to create a more team on the session just to make it a little bit more fun of this critical and innovation infrastructure. AI has completely transformed the helm of cloud computing, boosting efficiency, scalability, and performance. But the ubiquity of this new accessibility technology, it's bringing a lot of different risks for your organization and for also exposing specifically cloud assets that you are building. It's very, very important for you to start understanding cloud security and the security aspects when you are building AI. In today's tale, right, once upon a time, all the cybersecurity defenders, they need to protect in some ways these new technologies. Who remembers the new technology that we talked years ago of DevOps? Who was involved with DevOps here? Anyone? Probably almost everybody here, right? DevOps was a fairy tale too. A lot of people didn't believe that much in the beginning, but then multiple organizations starting adopting DevOps and starting conducting the automation and the process and all those different things. And AI is not differently, right? AI is here to stay. And we all know that new technology, it's evolving very, very quickly. And we have a new series of a security challenge to take care in this new tale. If I start to talk about the cloud security architects and security engineers in the cloud or DevSecOps and all those different names that we have in the organizations today, you guys have so many responsibility today. So many, a lot. Sometimes you are overwhelming and burn out in some ways, right? From compliance, disaster recovery, cloud misconfiguration, vulnerabilities, risks, performance efficiency, well-architected framework, and multiple compliances that you need to meet with, right? And this is not just the end, right? The list is still increasing and increasing and increasing. And if I ask a question for you all here, just to break the ice, who here has received some of the questions before in the past, probably 2 years in your organization? Multiple people here, right? Because it's a very common question for not just the security teams, but also for the cloud architect teams that they are dealing with those different challenges. And then we have a little bit more challenge here with the AI-driven technologies that you are building. Again, who here has received this one, but in the past 6 months? Multiple people again, right? Almost overnight, security teams and cloud architects and DevSecOps teams, they have receiving tons of new requests and new inquiries from their leaders to see how they are making this innovation even faster, how you are making sure the AI technology that you are building are fully protected, are fully aligned with the compliance, how you are making sure every single of the data that are being consumed by AI models or AI database vectors, they are making validated, classified, and they have a free of risks when they are utilized internally or externally in your organization. All those elements are very critical for many organizations today. But when we think about an AI landscape, right? So many organizations today, they only think about AI as a unified technology. But there's multiple pieces in this evolving and rapidly technology that is transforming our environment that has been utilized for many years ago, right? The first one, when we think about artificial intelligence, we are talking about overarching term that encompass the field of developing computer systems to performing tasks that require human intelligence, right? That is an important capability that you have as part of your AI. The second layer here, it is associated with machine learning, where we start in creating a new methodology where we enable systems to learn from without being programming. You are like basically giving the data for them to start learning by themselves. And so many companies has been using machine learning for many years. I bet almost like everybody here has been using by somehow machine learning in your organization, right? Even in Trend Micro, we have been using machine learning for over a decade already, okay? And then you go to the next level here, that is like NLP, or natural language processing, right? Those new methodologies are like trying to bring the language of like humans to the machines to simplify the approach, how you are teaching them, how you are explaining things to the machines in an easier way or in a human methodology. Then you have another one here, that is the deep learning. That is basically a more advanced branch of like machine learning inspired by the human brains of like neural networks, right? Using the neural networks that you have in your brains and bringing that same methodology for the machines for them to be able to resolve specific problems. Then we have what? LLMs. The most common technology probably being talked nowadays, right? The large language models. And this is basically helping us to how we can aggregate a huge amount of data and bring to the computers for them to start learning from the scratch, but also applying technology as machine learning, natural processing language, and like helping them to identify and create specific information by themselves without you programming in any different like matter. And the last one here that we could not be here without mentioning is the generative AI, where you can start prompting the machines to generate specifically text, image, videos, podcasts, and many other technologies. Recently, I was writing a new paper that I'm going to share today, and I was using this new technology that you can basically upload it like papers, slides, shows, and different content. In 5 minutes, they create like a podcast with that entire content. It's kind of like crazy to think years ago. But today, they can consume a huge amount of data and apply that concept to different elements in the creation of like audio, videos, and many other things that we'll see in the future. Who here are not using any of those here? Can you raise your hands? Probably none. Everybody's using some form of like AI technologies. But what it's important here is to understand the landscape and how you are building those technologies consuming that, right? And then we go to the next level here, that is like AI maturity level, or AI journey and evolution on that like specifically matter. The first one is awareness and exploration. It's like where organization is starting, testing the AI, trying to make sure things are working, and trying to map with like a business needs, right? They starting mapping those business needs and say like, oh, these different like AI technologies can help here, and then they starting exploring if that will make sense. Then they will go to the experimentation and the POC, like testing those new technologies, making sure you have like a good results, making sure you can solve those problems that your business is requiring in your organization. Then you go for adoption and integration. Those adoptions and integration usually are like the small pieces of like in production infrastructure or like internal applications that you can start in consuming and integrating with the database vector, but it somehow could also be integrated with like some APIs or additional systems in your organization, right? The fourth stage here, it is optimization and scaling. A lot of companies, when they start putting those technologies in production, they also see that those technologies somehow can be optimized in performance, but also in cost optimization, right? AI, it's in some cases could be like more expensive than it is in reality, because you need to do some tunings, some improvements in the architecture and how you are dealing with the data, how you are training that information, and so on, right? The next one is the innovation and transformation, how you are bringing that innovation to your organization to transform your business, but also building a new innovation for your customers in a way to enhance and bringing the best as possible technology for your customers and partners. And the last one is the leadership and advocacy. And this is like basically As your organization become like a more mature in AI, you're starting teaching other companies in the same market about like how to use AI, how to lead with AI, how you can innovate it with AI in a way that you can advocate those technologies across the globe. That maturity, it is all related usually with the business needs and the technologies that you are creating, right? But the important here, it is also making sure the new risks of the organizations are being fully mapped with this actually evolution. The three basically layers here is the first one, data, the second one, model and management. Data is all related with like data sensitive, data classification, how you are making sure the data that you are using for the training or the database factory are validated. You know all the data that is being consumed as part of the training. Extortion is part of like a deep fake attacks that we are seeing more and more nowadays across the globe. Models. Your model, it is your kind of like brain in your organization. When you build that model with your data, it is very, very important for your company, right? If you don't protect that against like prompt injection, jailbreaks, models, denial of services, and so many other different attacks, that could be affecting the way how you are giving the access to specific applications in your company. Thinking back in the day, when you have a web application and those web applications could be affected by a cross-site scripting or SQL injection, right? It's kind of like a similar approach. You are running your AI models and you are receiving tons of like requests, but how you are making sure and validating those requests is they are properly safe. They should be processed by organizations without any problems, right? The third one here is related with the management. How do we are monitoring every single AI applications that you are building and doing like a policy enforcement for that? How you are understanding any shadow AIs that could be created across multiple AWS accounts that you, like your developers are building or different squads are building, how you can bring that full visibility to not like creating things that are not policy enforced or they are not in compliance with like maybe PCI DSS, HIPAA, GDPR, and many others, right? And unsanctioned AI and excessive agency, right? Unsanctioned AI, it's very interesting because I remember 6 months ago, we started talking with a C-level, right? And he's like, I don't want to stop anybody to use AI technologies because we are seeing like a huge production level of like increasing the organization with the AI. But I want to know which AI services they are using and who are using the AI and which kind of like information they are using on that specific transaction. Unsanctioned AI, it is when you detect a specific AI technology or AI SaaS technologies, how you can do a policy enforcement for those users that they are consuming those technologies, right? Those are important kind of like visibility that the organization should have. When you go to the next level here, it is talking about the AI attack surface. Every single stage when you are building your AI application, and this is a very, very basic like AI attack surface, right? But I'm giving as one example here, like a user going and prompting one assistant. The assistant will call the AI services APIs. They will process that information. They will connect with the AI agent. It could be LLM in the cloud, internally tooling, but also the internal database communicating with internal LLMs. All that process and all like the different stages here could be a point of like attack from like the different like attackers that they are looking to exfiltrate data or do a data breach attack or trying to execute exploitation in your organization, right? For example, the first layer, when you think about user to the assistant, your user, and it's funny to say this, but your user sometimes they don't have ideas about like how critical, depending the data that you are putting the prompt, could be affecting your company. Do you all agree with this? Because this is like a very simple like use case, but like we see sometimes users just like uploading Excel or uploading their code to the prompt and expecting they improving the code or expecting to get like a summary information in the Excel. They will get that for sure. But at the same time, the SaaS technologies that they are using, they will basically gather that information That's why it's very, very important to make sure all the transactions that they are being put inside those prompts, right? And really depends also which kind of like AI. It's the AI that you are building, those are on-primes and private LLMs and technologies, or those AI SaaS that you are consuming, right? For example, from third-party ISVs or third-party vendors. Those are like important areas that you can consider as part of like your AI attack surface in action. One of the important things here, it is, as I mentioned before, AI is to stay. And I'm not saying you should not use AI in any matter. I'm saying you need to use AI for keeping the innovation. But it's very, very critical for a lot of companies, a lot of organizations across the globe to keep the balance between the innovation and the risks that those new technologies are bringing to your company, right? Like AI is bringing like a huge transformation in many different like markets, gaming, marketing, manufacturing, cybersecurity, cloud infrastructure, and so many others, right? Like intelligence being like a process with the data and insights, automated fraud detection and prevention. This is like a huge for financial services, right? Smart public services, how like all the telemetry that like cities are collecting, they can apply to simplify things for the smart cities that they are being built across the globe. But the other parts are very, very important too. How you are making sure that infrastructure is being protected. How you are making sure the data that is being collected and the sensitive information that you are processing, there is no risk to be exfiltrated by some prompts, right? By some jailbreaking, by some like execution of exploits in that specifically infrastructure. Another important point is how you are maintaining the compliance and the frameworks that your organization needs to have in the cloud infrastructure. And the other third one here that is very important, it is the cyber attacks and the zero-day vulnerabilities, and you see why I'm mentioning about this case. But all those points are like trying to help you to keep the balance with like innovative technology, risk assessment, and 24 hours visibility for that infrastructure that you are building. Plan your defense. This is very, very, very important. Please plan that from the scratch. Don't wait for the last minute to start thinking about security. Strategize security for your heroic journey is very, very key. And I highly recommend you like bothering everybody in your organization to think differently when it is security for AI, okay? And I started building this blueprint probably 6 months ago when I started talking with like heavily with a lot of customers on cybersecurity for AI. And I put like this together, like 50,000 view blueprint, and I connected some dots to help you to understand the layers protection for each of those technologies. But the first one on the left here, it is additional cloud services. A lot of people sometimes they think, oh, AI is just AI. No, AI, it is connected and related with a lot of other cloud services. Like you could be running your AI models in microservices. Then you have a AKS, you have a VPC, you have a security groups, you have an internet gateway. You have like many other pieces in that puzzle to build that application that are being used by AI technologies, right? In this case here, you have the first layer, that is the data. That is the data collection for maybe the training of your models, or it could be also for the database vector that you are building for the AI. The second one, it is the AI technologies that you are using to run those models. Could be Amazon SageMaker, Bedrock, or NVIDIA NIMs with like an inference from NVIDIA, right? Then you have like some cases that you can use the AI Foundry from NVIDIA, where you have a combination of like NeMo, DGX Cloud, and NIMs. And then you have the foundation that could be using infrastructure from AWS, your own infrastructure in your on-premise environments that some customers is still having the hybrid infrastructure today. And then you have like the connectivity from outside. It could be your internal users or employees, or it could be attackers trying to affect the APIs that are exposed to the internet, okay? But let's start in digging each of those details. The first one, it is the secure your data, right? Securing your data is very, very critical. And there's a couple villains and there is heroes on this part. Couple villains, and there is more here. I just tried to summarize in 3 or 2 or 1 specific case for each of those sections to make that simple enough for us to all understand and realize the critical problems that we should be thinking and solving across our organizations. The first one here, villains. Exfiltration, unrestricted access to data that could be personal, financial, or credentials, and also extortion of the deepfakes. Heroes, how you are monitoring the data risks that you have in your environment, how you are doing the data classification, how do you make sure every single data being utilized in the AI model training and also in the AI database vector, you know that it's like sensitive information. Those should be mapped by like some tagging like on those AI applications. For example, when you consume that data that are being used with like a personal database for your employees or for your customers, please make sure it's being tagged and classified. This way, if that specific AI application goes public, you know right away that that specific AI application has confidential information that should not be blocked at all. We all remember the S3 problems, being public or private, right? It's actually a similar problem here, right? Your AI applications could be public or private, but how you are monitoring if those that should be public or should be private, they are in some ways, okay? One good way for you to monitoring those use cases is imagine you have a sensitive information being utilized in the Amazon S3 knowledge source, right? That data is being processed and consumed by AI, the AWS Lambda functions, put it in the queue, and also being consumed by AWS app running. And then you have your models running in Bedrock that will be consumed by users from prompt and documents and so on, right? But it's very important for you to have like a way that you are monitoring any specifically sensitive information in S3. And this is a very simple use case, but maybe you are using EFS, maybe you are using FSX, maybe you are using RDS. How you are monitoring all those different like databases that you are consuming for data sensitive to bring like some kind of like a risk visibility. And that risk visibility should be mapped to say like, oh, what are the actual S3 buckets? What are the RDS or EFS that they have those sensitive information? Which locations they are being used? Which informations they have? It is a personal information, it's a database information of like financial data, right? Or it's like a credentials, or it could be others, right? Depending, the organization could be intellectual property from their own organization that is being added on those databases, okay? When you go to the second stage here, it is to secure your AI models in microservices. And I try to get microservices because the consumption of containers are increasing many times more nowadays because how easy it is for you to spin up like a new model in containers, right? Like back in the day, you need to create like a virtual machines and consume the GPUs and all those different things. But now with the containers, you can consume the GPUs through the microservices to simplify how you are building those new environments. The villains on these specific aspects will be the vulnerabilities and attacks to the AI models running microservices that could be leading to a data breach, could be leading to a data poisoning, or also lateral movements that can generate risks inside the organization. The heroes could be runtime visibility for those containers. How you are monitoring every single container that you have in your EKS infrastructure or in your Fargate as one example. Vulnerability scanning pre and also post runtime. Like for example, basically understanding the vulnerabilities that are being introduced in the environment, but also understanding if there is any new vulnerability that it is being introduced on those applications and package that are being consumed by the AI models. For example, you deploy a huge fleet of containers today. Tomorrow there is a new vulnerability. How do you monitoring every single container in runtime, which ones they have those vulnerabilities, right? Those are important information for you to have it and also to correlate it with the telemetry from the cloud provider. What do I mean here? It is gathering the information from the CloudTrail, EKS logs information, AWS WAF information, VPC flow logs, and so on, okay? Then you have like one interesting use case here that is like users accessing a specifically layer application here that they're running in two different like zones. And those different like zones, they have like in this example, NIM pods, right? Like the inference from NVIDIA. And they are consuming a couple other AWS services. But the important parts here, it is monitoring for any vulnerabilities and compliance that could be not meeting based in those infrastructures. Monitoring for any kind of like vulnerabilities on the packets or like any specifically file that could be running inside those containers or those microservices, right? And also be able to address any remediation. If you detect any suspicious activities in this container, how can you isolate that container right away? Or how you can basically remediate it to be able to respond quickly and automatically recreate that container without affecting the production in your infrastructure, okay? All that visibility are being collected by some runtime technologies that can be integrated in the BPF. This way you don't affect the performance in the actual Kubernetes cluster. The third one here, I'm sorry, just drinking a little bit of water. The third one here, it is secure your AI infrastructure in the cloud. This is actually important because it connects with like one of the main points that we have a problem for over 10 years. That is cloud misconfiguration. Everybody will say, oh, no, this problem is already solved. No, it's not already solved, and we all know that. It's interesting to see there is a report that came out, I think was end of like last year from ESG. And they were talking about like the cloud risks and the cloud problems, right? 30% of the attacks in the cloud is still because cloud misconfiguration. It's kind of like crazy because we have been talking about like a misconfiguration for over 10 years and we still have the same problem over and over and over again, right? Very, very important to have like a ways that you are monitoring this infrastructure that you are building with AI for suspicious activities, right? When you think about these new technologies, specifically in AWS, you have like Amazon Bedrock and Amazon SageMaker. How you are monitoring the misconfiguration of those services, but also how you are monitoring for suspicious activities, what that means. If we look back in that first architecture that I show you, you have the sensitive information, you have like the knowledge base being processed by like a AWS Lambda functions, AWS app runners, and then you may have like a Bedrock or you may have like a SageMaker to utilize as part of like your AI models here. But the important parts here, it is the down level here. It's being monitored by CSPM technology, Cloud Security Posture Management, or CIEM, that is like a cloud identity, cloud infrastructure identity management. Those are like to monitor the cloud misconfigurations, but also any issues with the identity, permissions, if they are overly permissive, how you can have a visibility for the permissivity, and also the rules that they have been applied for those assets or the users that are being accessed those services, right? The other one here, it is recognize any vulnerability or malwares. Those malwares could be inside S3, it could be a vulnerability or malware inside the AWS function, or it could be inside like a fleet of like EC2s or containers. How you are monitoring those with like agentless technologies, right? But the point here that I want to highlight, it is the AISPM visibility. How you are bringing all that knowledge and the correlation between the CSPM, CIEM, and agentless capabilities to an AI security visibility that can help you to identify any additional potential problems related with those AI applications, okay? That's the first level. The second one, it is what we call AIDR. And AIDR, it is related with the logs information being generated by those AI services. It could be Bedrock or it could be SageMaker. In this case, it is connecting the information from CloudTrail, VPC flow logs, and all the cloud logs that we can collect from the AWS to apply threat detection models on top of that, okay? Very, very important. Just like to be able to see The first one is the AI-SPM kind of like technologies, how you can bring that information about the risks, the cloud accounts, the models issues, and the workloads being related, all the vulnerabilities connected with, all the misconfigurations, and all the potential attack paths related with those specific events. And when you go to the next level, it is like a correlation of CloudTrail logs that we identify unauthorized deletion of attempting a knowledge base inside the bedrock, right? This is one example of like those techniques that could be utilized or in some attacks. At the same time, when you're collecting that information from CloudTrails and VPC flow logs, it's very, very important should that information be connected and correlated with the MITRE Atlas, right? MITRE Atlas is a framework being created by MITRE to help organizations to identify any suspicious activities from the telemetry connected with the attack techniques that was being recognized by different like research across the globe, okay? Those are like a fully mapped ways that helps the SOC operations in your organization for a cloud response when they have some issues. The fourth piece here will be related with secure your AI applications. And this is like a go a little bit after to the users on the right side when I was showing to you all, right, in the 50,000 view blueprint. The problems here, it is untrusted technologies that could be running in the machines of like users or developers. Those like threats could be affected like the files and the configurations from the AI local applications, okay? This example, imagine you have like a developers or users in your organizations that they are using AI apps, and there is like a new file that is being affecting those applications or those configurations. Have a way to detect any kind of like unauthorized or files that could be modifying those configurations right away. It's very critical for them to not affecting any confidential data that could be under those machines, for example. It is simple technology that in some cases could be called AppGuard or AI AppGuard that can basically be monitoring any kind of like change on those files from the AI local applications, okay? Secure your users. That's another big problem that is coming recently, deepfakes. Any here has been affected by any potential deepfake in your organization or personal that wanna raise your hands? No? Interesting. First time in a session in the last 6 months that I don't see that. Every conversation recently that I have with a customer, they have been affected by deepfake. This type of attack is increasing heavily and it's becoming more part of like the news. I don't know if you saw some news in Singapore, in US, Australia, in Europe, where organizations are being affected by like the deepfakes for financial transfer, for BEC, business email compromise that are dealing with like a video conference with like a multiple C-levels that they are kind of like forcing the operations people to do things that they should not be doing or to like act or share information that they should not be acting in the organization, okay? This is becoming a more common problem than we were expecting, right? Because AI is so easily broad and accessible for so many organizations nowadays, and it's very easy for anybody to create a deepfake. Have you tried to create a deepfake? I did. It took me 15 minutes. It's crazy easy, it's crazy cheap, right? And that same attack could be used by like extortion, trying to manipulate people to do things, having a technology that can help you to prevent and detect a deepfake, not just in the laptops, but also in your mobiles, would be very, very important for the future, okay? Secure AI services and how you are accessing those services, right? The villains in this case would be attempting for sensitive information that could be trying to utilize on those prompts. The heroes could be like AI gateways that could be in between the users and also the AI applications. In this case here, there is like a request from like a developer, and the developer posts like a secret code in that specific prompt. In this case, because we have AI gateway monitoring that request, you were able to detect a specifically prompt of like a source code, and that was blocked. I know this is a very simple code, right? But it could be very important code from your organization. It could be a secret or an important algorithm for like your application that a developer put there by mistake. Actually, this happens with a public case with like Samsung a couple months ago. I don't know if you all saw that. The next one here, it is VLANs, related with like the communication with those applications, but in the response back. For example, in this case, the user, they try to request the AI because they knew there's sensitive information being part of the training, and there's not like a good guardrails in between that communication. The user was able to get like information confidentially from the employees or from people from the organizations, could be customers, partners, or their own local employees, right? The case here, it is when you have that level of like protection, of like monitoring, you could see if there is any sensitive information being part of the response, you can basically overwrite and redo like the response back to the user. This way you are not compromising or sharing sensitive information back to those users. Another important point when we are talking about like that communication, it is the exploitation and vulnerabilities. All those applications could have like specific vulnerabilities, and we are seeing more and more vulnerabilities are coming out related with the AI and models, right? How you are protecting against those, it is very, very important, right? Good way for that will be a virtual patching or IDS and IPS technology that can monitoring all those vulnerabilities and recommend you specifically protection on the network layer to prevent any exploitation to those vulnerabilities. Or you could basically connect with the developers in some way to also helping them to fix quickly. But if you have like a ways to mitigate it in the meantime, because you need like an extra window to test, to validate it, to make sure things are not going to break, then you need to have like some kind of like a network layer protection for compliance level and compliance requirements. Okay, I think we covered the 6 major areas here in that specifically blueprint. And what I did here was basically a way to connect every single of those layers with the security for data, where you can have like a data security posture management to have like bringing the visibility and also understanding all the critical and for you to safeguard the data sensitive that you have. The second one, it is secure your AI models. Since we were talking about microservices, having a container security technology that can monitor the runtime, but also the pre-runtime, it is very important for you to bring some kind of like visibility on those models running in microservices today. The third one here, it is related with the infrastructure that you're running, like the foundational layer, right? And that is like every foundational layer is very important. Making sure you are compliant, making sure you don't have a misconfiguration, making sure you don't have vulnerabilities on that infrastructure, it is a key element for you to bring visibility and understanding the problems that may have in that infrastructure for you. The fourth one, it is the local apps and the deepfake attacks that will be affecting your own employees and your own users here, or even your own customers, right? The fifth layer here, it is securing the AI access. Remember when I was showing like sensitive information that could be compromised because you were like trying to prompt, but also the response back? That could be one AI gateway monitoring that request between the AI infrastructure and the users, where you can monitoring for any potential data breach or sensitive information on that process of the prompt. And the last one here, it is defending against like a zero-day exploit and defending against those vulnerabilities that can be seen by the CVEs, but also being protected by IDS and IPS. And I know a lot of people take those pictures. I saw a lot of photos here now. A way to help you all here, I did like some extra work, homework before coming to this session for the first time. I did like a full white paper for this session to help you with the details of like every single layer that I was explaining in more details. I know I don't have enough time to explain every single detail in the way how I want, but I try to put like in 30 pages here the more detail as possible about like what is LLMs, how to integrate it with the security into AI applications architecture, a little bit more about the AI attack surface action that you can discuss with your developers to understand a little bit more, threat modeling that I was basically using the data from OWASP top 10, then the actual latest release that actually is not public, but I was being part of the review of the content, and I was be able to gather that information with David Gihard and a couple other people in the Trend Micro side, monitoring those content. The AI blueprint that I just showed to you all here, but also there is a thing that we created for organizations a couple months ago during the GTEx not GTEx, sorry, There's an event in Taipei that happens with AI. I forget the name. Sorry about that. And on that event, we release what we call a Learn Architecture overview. Okay, that's another interesting paper that our research team released. Focus on the best practice on how to build your RAG, how to build your LLMs, how to make sure that communication and the standards and frameworks are being in place to help you to be more vigilant and building a more secure AI technologies in your organizations, okay? Those are additional details. I hope, sorry, I don't know if everybody took a screenshot or like grabbed the, one more? Yeah, sorry. This one? Yeah. Just want to make sure everybody, was a lot of work to make this public today, and I just want to like let you all know that I did. Yeah.
So what is the chance that, like just a question, that these barcodes are not, the scanners are secured?
Oh yeah, it's we build the yeah.
Like in general public or like
Oh, the validation of the URLs. Yeah. That's a very good point. There is like mobile technologies that can be in place in the mobile phones that every single time when you actually try to scan those QR codes, because they are URLs, right? That you validated the reputation of those URLs to make sure they are safe before you actually accessing. Yeah. Okay. Going forward here, I want to just do like a couple of takeaways, get your fairy tale ending here with like all this discussion. The first one, it is the duality of the AI. AI empowers adversaries and defenders to like make things better, but also worse, right? AI is transforming like every single market that we know right now. And they are going way faster than we think. But attackers, they are using this as a malicious way to create like a new ways to attack organizations. That's why it's very important to utilize AI technologies to help you to protect yourself too. Not just like to build for innovation, but also to protect against the new adversaries that they are building today, okay? Plan your security right now. Please, don't forget when you are building your AI applications to have a framework, like a strategy for your cybersecurity. This is very critical. I think as a techie person for many years, I think we all agree that we fail in DevOps about security. And we started creating the DevSecOps, we started creating so many different like acronyms to try to implement security after. But we can't fix this problem right now. We can like start creating the AI technologies with the mindset of security from the scratch, instead of like waiting for that to be in production and then thinking about security, okay? That's one of the most important things that I wanted to actually bring to this session. It's for all of you to start thinking about cybersecurity when you are building your AI technologies. And the last one, it's a platform-wide AI mesh. When you are building those technologies, when you're thinking about cybersecurity, have a platform, a cybersecurity platform that has AI technology is embedded that can help you to anticipate it and also predicting specifically risks and attacks in your company. Okay, those would be very beneficial for the way how you are responding back and the way how you are creating more how they call like a potential attack, a path prediction for your organizations to help preventing those problems, new vulnerabilities, attacks, ransomwares, and so on. Okay. And they live securely ever after. Okay, this is the fairy tale of like cybersecurity for AI. I know there's jokes apart here, but I just want to make like everybody enjoy a little bit of this session. I hope this brings like some very interesting content to help you all in your companies. And if there is any questions, we have basically 15 minutes here that you'll love to open for questions.